All right, good evening, everyone. I'm calling to order our, well, I guess first meeting back, official meeting, City Council regular meeting, Tuesday, September 6th. I'll have our city clerk and/or stand-in do the roll call, please.
Mayor Clark,
Here?
Deputy Mayor Lamb,
Here.
Councilmember Howe,
Here.
Councilmember Treen,
Present.
Councilmember Stewart,
Here.
Councilmember Indapure,
Here.
and Councilmember O'Farrell.
Present.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Treen, do you mind doing the Pledge of Allegiance? All right, thank you. Councilmember O'Farrell, do you have the land acknowledgement pulled up? I think it's on our paper copy too,
Okay.
if you wouldn't mind doing that.
Yes. I just read from here.
Yeah, that'd be great.
We acknowledge that we are on the indigenous land of the Coast Salish peoples who have reserved treaty rights to this land, specifically the Snoqualmie Indian tribe. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived and continue to live here since time immemorial.
Great, thank you so much. All right, next I'll entertain a motion for approval of the agenda.
I move we approve the agenda.
Second. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, 7-0, the agenda is approved. Next, we'll move on to public comment. Do we have anyone in the room? All right. Oh, thank you so much. All right, we have one. All right, go ahead, James Eastman.
Thanks, Mayor. James Easton, Sammamish, Washington. I don't dare hold it. I fell for that once before and I got in trouble. So, James Eastman, Sammamish, Washington. Came back into town today and noticed I had 2 mailboxes laying on the ground. And I've probably been up here at least 3 or 4 times in the last 5 years talking about the busyness of East Lake Sammamish Parkway and the danger of crossing the street at the very place an accident occurred yesterday. And to cross at that location, if you want to use a crosswalk, you got to go about 1.5 miles south or north just to even get to a crosswalk. And there's no sidewalk or any improvements along the way. But I don't expect that will ever be improved. But I guess what bothers me somewhat is the fact that concurrency program is meant to, monitor our roads, the safety of our roads, and we have continually gamed that roadway in particular. First, I think we allocated about 1,000 vehicles to the trail to justify not doing anything down there, and then we did the EIS and chose alternative 4, which magically dropped capacity on the parkway from like 1,700 vehicles being the busiest segment in the entire city to like 1,000 vehicles. And now we just increased flow by doing that change down the Redmond intersection. But we also put in our concurrency that we're just not going to monitor and pretend like it doesn't exist and it's not there, which I don't agree with having to, make hundreds of millions of dollars in improvements down there. But when you're not monitoring something, you just don't do anything about it because it's nothing there to see. So it'd be nice if you guys can consider doing some of these crosswalks like they have at the Landing Park where people want to get to that trail and they don't want to go all the way to the Redmond border to get across, where, the curbs kind of come in, people slow down to 30 and maybe the crosswalk lights up or something like that. That would be helpful. But that same accord, the retreat last week was excellent, a lot of great goals, but same thing, if we're not monitoring them, I don't know if we're going to accomplish much. So it'd be nice to see some metrics that go along with your guys' goals, whatever they may be. that just are measuring sticks to see what you're accomplishing and where we can improve. Same thing on the Emerald Necklace Trail. It sounded like in that last goal-setting meeting that council thinks it's a lot further than it really is, because I don't think there's close to being the Emerald Necklace. They got a lot of parcels they got to go get, but we don't know unless we're monitoring it. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, we'll move on to online.
If you wish to provide public comment, please raise your hand. For attendees who are joining by phone, please raise your hand by pressing *9. I see we have 2 callers currently. Well, now 1. I will promote the first speaker, who will have 3 minutes to provide comment. Please start your comment by stating your name and the city you live in for the record. And we're back up to 2 commenters, so promote the first one. Mary Wichter.
Good evening, City Council. I'm Mary Wichter. I've lived in Sammamish over 20 years. And I wanted to speak tonight on public comments related to the stormwater rate study, which I'm glad you're doing, and the level of services. I did email in an email, so you can read that. And in that email, my purple colored text is the ideas that I'll try to cover in my 3 minutes here. First of all, it sounds like that there are ample reserves from prior presentations by the consultant for the stormwater fee that were built up from prior collection of the surface water management fees, or SWIM fees as they're called. And I do agree that stormwater management fees should be charged. You're doing it the same type of strategy that's been used in the past, and equivalent service units, which Sammamish Plateau Water also uses for their water and sewer, so I agree with that. And I do agree that schools are listed as one of the building, but I believe that they get some or full exemption of the stormwater fees as long as there's an educational curriculum that they provide that has stormwater. I believe that's still happening, and I support that. One thing I would like to see is that there be some sort of relief made available to individuals or families who are qualified low income and then don't add additional undue qualifications. For example, if they meet the King County levels for seniors who receive reduced property taxes, or if they qualify for free lunch programs in public school, or other assistance, Puget Sound Energy assistance for electric and gas costs, or for either one of the water districts assistant providing water and sewer services at either short-term or long-term for lower costs. So I would like to see that added. I think the city should always try for as many grant opportunities every year as that you can for projects. There's a number of sources, particularly that are successful for stormwater. The other idea that was in 2016 was that the city could hire a grant writer, either full-time, part-time, or consultant who would help with the city's efforts to, just like the lobbyists that we use to ask for grants, because it's very cost-effective to do that. For the levels of service, I basically agree that the baseline level of service is exactly what you need if that's just the only required stuff, and when you didn't do it in the past that there were problems. I do believe that you should have small drainage resolutions, but instead of them being 50,000 to 300,000, I'd like to see that number 50,000 to 600,000, just because there's been so many price changes. Even small projects can cost a lot, and some of them might even cost up to 1.2 million. And also there are multiple grant sources. So if you could get a $400,000 grant for one of those, it would reduce the city's outlay for them. I also see that there's a thing for property acquisition, which I think is great, but please make sure that that fund's name is retitled so that it has wide enough scope so that it would include easements as well as property, because a lot of times easements will be on top of utility corridors, and then that would help people and wildlife in emergencies, and it'd be less expensive for the city than actually buying it outright. And I don't have
Thank you so much.
minutes, but you can refer to my email and I will listen to the presentation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will now promote the next commenter. Jennifer?
So, hi guys. Let me go ahead and start my video really quick. Can you guys see me okay? All right. I'm not totally sure. Okay, it looks like it's getting ready to start. So my name is Jennifer Coombs. I've met many of you, so you know who I am at this point. And I'm the executive director of the 501c3, a nonprofit Essence Health and Research Foundation, which is also known as Project Thrive, and is located here in Sammamish, Washington. And I wanted to bring it to the city council, and you guys have gotten a few emails, so you're probably going to see me a few times during this human services grant process. And so I just kind of a little warning, but I'm going to be doing some advocacy for my nonprofit and other nonprofits as well. So I wanted to bring it to the city council and the general public that our city is about to approve human services grants for many nonprofits in our area for a 2-year cycle in the coming weeks and months. And so I know that this is actually not on your docket yet, but the human services grant funding is actually just kind of going through the finalizing process with the Human Services Commission. And so it will be arriving to you guys very soon. And it's going to be new for you guys to be doing this. So it's going to be a really big impact for you guys to make the right decisions here. So many of the initial funding recommendations were made by the Sammamish Human Services Department and the Human Services Commission in the last few months. And when finalized, these recommendations will come to the Sammamish City Council to finalize. At the current time, 12 nonprofits that were up for funding were not recommended for human services grants, and that also includes Essence Health and Research Foundation and other Sammamish nonprofits. This is a critical stop point of correction at this juncture. We really need to pay attention here. There are Sammamish nonprofits being left out of critical funding. That means we have to wait 2 more years for funding if we're not included in this particular grant cycle. So this is a critical point of correction at this juncture, and the City Council can make that correction. So while the Human Services Department and the Commission can make these recommendations, that's not the final decision. You guys are. And so that's a powerful place of accountability for all of you to help us as Sammamish residents and nonprofits to make sure we get the funding that we need. So leaving out our Sammamish nonprofits out of the funding is not an option at this point. And you can send it back to the commission, or you can really make that correction yourself. So this is also representing a strong theme of heavily funding. So essentially, I'm going to go ahead and speak off the cuff. Just because of the time requirement here. So essentially what's happening is that we have large nonprofits and all of it that's getting a lot of funding, and it's leaving out small nonprofits. And it's also leaving out Sammamish nonprofits. And so you guys can either approve new funding or more funding for human services. You can correct this and send it back to the commission, or you can actually make the correction yourself and spread out this funding through a bunch of us who have not received any funding yet and can't get into the cycle. So I'm going to be seeing you guys again. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys again soon. Take care.
Great. Thank you so much.
Are there any other commenters? I'm just going to give a few more seconds here. Okay, I see no more raised hands. Back to you, Madam Mayor.
Great, thank you so much. All right, next we are moving to executive session. So pending and potential litigations pursuant to RCW 42.30.1101I, and we do have 3 items that all fall under the same RCW, so I think we're anticipating 15 minutes per, so 45 minutes, and you know I can't do math. 7:13, 7:15, what? 7:30? Okay. Oh, goodness. Okay. 7:30. Yeah, thank you. Thankfully, I have somebody to help me. All right, 7:30, we will be back. Thank you so much. All right, I think we can get started. My Zoom is not working yet. Okay, so I will open it up for any motions from the floor.
I'll get there.
Sorry, one moment. I don't know if we have the verbiage.
Uh-oh. We might need a minute. I'll get ourselves reconnected here.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it in the agenda, so I'm going to try and look. Yeah, did you find it? I think it's from
We need to do the consent first.
David Pyle. No, I think we have to do this first before consent, if I'm right.
So I make a motion that we move the development agreement recommendation and that we send that to the planning commission to have them look that through and then bring that back to us for their recommendation and a deep dive into the happenings there.
All right, I don't believe there is a second. So we will fail that motion.
Do we have?
No.
I'll give this, can I give it a, do we want to wing it? Carrie, does it need to be very specific, or can we wing this?
I believe I have it. Hold on just 1 second. I'm just doing it from my phone. 1 second.
Sorry.
The thing I'm looking at is quite detailed.
Okay.
Well, it was a memo from David Pyle.
Oh, I don't think it's,
It's just about the agreement.
I don't think it needs to be that.
Thought it was at the end.
Let me see. Okay. There we go. Yeah, I'm looking. It's not as cut and dried as I was thinking it was. I thought there was.
Highlight that part anyway. That's the one I was looking at. Can I just pass that down?
All right, I think I at least have part of it.
Is this it? Do you want this?
I believe it's this one.
Where's that?
So I move that we direct the interim city manager to authorize negotiation of a development agreement with STCA for its Brownstones West project. Full stop.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. I do not have a discussion on this, except I know if anyone else does, I think this is the time. I know this was hard to find, and we need to get some stuff out. If anyone else has anything. Councilmember Trine?
Yeah, I'm not supportive of this. We need to take this is a big change. It's the biggest project that's going on in the city, largest development. There's going to be some modifications, variants, deviations from the current code. And so that is exactly what our planning commission is set up to do, is to take a deep dive, do the research, and then bring back a recommendation to the council. So there's no way I'd be supporting this at this time. It should be going to the planning commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Stewart?
Yeah, development agreements are very common in developments like this, right? We have town center code that is big and complicated, and not every situation can be accounted for. So having the staff and the developer enter into an agreement which requires that if there are any variances whatsoever to the code, or even any questions, that there be a clear public benefit. The development agreement provides that. It ensures that we will have less, it's working towards having less impermeable surface, more green space, things like that. Obviously, it will come back and have discussion, so I believe that it's really important that we move forward with these development agreements so that we can ensure that we can work through amicably and not in the court of law agreements that will provide for the public benefit. So I'm fully supportive of having our staff, who I think at this point might have that code memorized, work with the developer to create an agreement that provides clear public benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Howe?
And if I'm reading this correctly, it's initial changes. So that it's not a firm and complete and final concrete list. It's initial negotiations and recommendations. And with that, I feel very comfortable in voting yes for this.
All right, thank you. Is there anything else?
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. If I may, for council and the public, if council chooses to approve this motion, staff will be putting out a staff memo and a letter from the applicants. We'll put that on the town center page on the city's website. And as our city attorney was reminding me, before we could ever finalize a development agreement, it requires a public hearing. So at a minimum, there will be public process down the road before we get to any final agreement on that. So.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Stewart?
One last clarification just for the public. Again, this is for the Brownstone West only, so it is a very small portion. This is not for the entirety of the town center. This is for a very specific set of development and a very specific piece of development. And so I think this is a great first step where we can get the staff and the developer working together. Again, it will come back, it will have public hearing, it will get plenty of public input before it gets approved. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Treen?
Yeah, for the public, just wanted to let you also be aware that this is seems to be a fast tracking of and a benefit to one particular developer. So just to take that in mind as well, and I will not be supporting. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything else? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
All right, by a vote of 6-1, I'm not going to repeat that again, but I think we have it captured, I hope. All right, thank you, and thank you to staff as well.
Thank you, Council.
All right, next I will entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
A motion to accept the consent calendar.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, by a vote of 7-0, all of consent calendar is approved. So next we are moving on to our Planning Commission appointment. So Krista, I don't know if you're taking over with instructions or if I can do anything to help you out.
Well, I would just like the council to clarify the procedure, but I've been in communication with the applicants. I said the latest information was 3 minutes per applicant to speak, and they will be coming up to the podium. 3 are here in person and 1 is via Zoom. And then I don't have the voting process clarified, but I have given you your voting sheet, which would be similar to what we did for the council, but I didn't know if you were the procedure for how you were going to vote to determine the applicant, if that could be clarified.
Great, thank you. Yes, I understood it as 3 minutes as like an introduction or anything that we may have not, or you may have not covered in your application would be super helpful. So anything you just want us to know. We will go in order from what is on the council packet, that order, the 1 through 4. I will find that in just a second. And then as far as voting, did we nail something down? I know we have paper ballots here. It looks like we're all, what was that? We said a motion. Okay. So we will entertain a motion from the floor. Is that what you understood?
That's correct, Mayor.
Okay.
I think the plan is that just entertain motion from the floor, and if that candidate fails, then you would just continue on until you approve a candidate.
Great, thank you. And order as it is done in our agenda item number 19, it is Miss Dina Ann, John Backman, Robert Curtis, then Nandini Gupta. So I'm assuming it's Miss Dina Ann that is virtual.
Yes, I'm promoting her right now. There she is on the screen.
Perfect. And I'll watch the 3-minute clock.
Can we get the...
Okay, there we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we're just going to get the clock up so you can see it. Here we go, maybe on the screen. Setting up the podium camera.
And hopefully you caught instructions while you're being promoted. I believe you did. The 3-minute.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
great.
Yep,
Thank
yep.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Are we ready? Okay. Hello, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Sammamish Council, and staff. I have been a resident of Sammamish for a short time, about 3 years, and 2 of those were pandemic years. And as this last year, as things started opening up, it was my chance to become a supportive member of the community. To my joy, I was able to do so by being part of the Parks Commission. Having lived in the greater Puget Sound area since 1981 and having seen the growth of many regions in the state go from a series of neighborhoods to full-blown cities, I have experience with all different approaches to growth. I have seen what works and what hasn't. With that history and my drive, I'm a great candidate to the addition to the Planning Commission. I come educated and ready to dive right in. If there's a topic I'm not familiar with, I will do research until I understand all the aspects, so I may offer a well-balanced and thought-out suggestion. As I have mentioned, I am currently on the Parks Commission. The Commission's a great support to the Parks Department, and I'm beyond grateful to be position number 7, especially as we're looking at creating new parks with different options for the community. Each space being unique, the entire park support system is working hard to create parks that offer the best fit for Sammamish residents and the topography. Having been through this process with the parks gives me another advantage for the Planning Commission. For me, working with the council and the community to help define our landscape is incredibly exciting. Now is a great time to be a part of the process, as Sammamish is a very unique young city at an adolescence moving into young adulthood crossroad. How the city grows from this point is going to impact the feel and the life of the community we all call home. Our landscape is very unique, as we still have our biodiversity, bear, deer, wildcats and dogs, butterflies, eagles, and other birds of prey. Our aquifer, which supplies our water as well as water to a lot of those below us in our topography, and we still have a lot of our tree canopy. All of this is the reason that our complimentary accolades and awards are presented at our feet. With this in front of us, the biggest lift is to create land use that keeps Sammamish Sammamish and offers the diversity necessary to keep up with housing needs, school concurrency, and the infrastructure like clean water, smooth roads, and technology to accommodate the increase in residency. I'm interested in supporting the council, connecting with the community, and being a voice for all who reside within our limits, as well as taking great care to be considerate to our neighboring cities. I'm asking for your vote today for the Planning Commission, and I hope to receive it. Thank you, and have a great evening.
Great, thank you so much. All right, next we have John Backman.
Okay, we are ready. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Clark, council members, city residents, staff, thank you for the opportunity to present my qualifications and experience for this Planning Commission position. As outlined in my resume and questionnaire responses, I've served in a range of work capacities in local government and organizations over 39 years. I retired in 2020. Since the year 2000, I worked directly or indirectly for city and county planning, community development departments. Most recently, I managed the permit system and implemented online permitting for King County Department of Permitting and Environmental Review, now Local Services. Most recently, I managed from 2000-2004, I was the Assistant Director for the City of Bellevue Planning Community Development Department, along with David Pyle, overseeing the permit system, budget, and information technology. In 2001, 9 cities, including the city of Sammamish, formed the East City Gov Alliance, a formal interlocal agency. The newly formed alliance first project was the implementation of a shared service online permitting portal. I became responsible for leading the implementation of what is now known as mybuildingpermit.com. I went on to become the executive director of the alliance from 2004 to 2013. My experience in the alliance is particularly applicable to my participation as a planning commission member. Our success at the alliance was relied on highly collaborative process, including stakeholders such as the Master Builders Association. In addition to my formal responsibilities, I served on 4 volunteer work boards. The most significant of these boards was the Municipal Employment Benefit Trust Board. As a member and chair of MEBT, I was a fiduciary for approximately 6,000 employees across 9 cities and NORCOM. MEBT currently manages about $1 billion in assets. In the years prior to 2000, I worked for the Bellevue Parks Department and King County Parks. My work for King County Parks is notable because I was the last resident park manager of Pine Lake Park from 1980 to 81. In 1991, my wife and I moved to Sammamish near Pine Lake Park. I've seen the transformation of Sammamish from a largely rural to a city of over 60,000 people in a very short period of time. While I think it's important to honor our past, the role of the Planning Commission is to include the City Council's vision and goals, which we've just been working on, for the future of the recently launched comprehensive plan. I will work collaboratively with Planning Commission members and staff, community members, to update the comp plan and reflect the views and values of our entire community.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, Robert Curtis.
Thank you, Commission, for letting me speak. I've always been interested in land use policy since I began working for my father, who was a commercial real estate appraiser in Chicago. As a matter of fact, one of the first assignments that I accompanied him on was on a large piece of property in suburban Oak Brook, Illinois. On one side of the civil case was a nature conservancy group that wanted to protect one of the last virgin prairie refuges in metropolitan Chicago. And we met with a school teacher who volunteered for the group, who made a very compelling argument for preserving the wilderness area. Immediately afterward, we drove downtown Chicago, where we met with a developer who had an ambitious hotel development plan for the site. The one thing that I took away from these 2 meetings, one right after another, was how both sides had produced highly compelling arguments for their vision for the site's future use. Which one was right? Flip of a coin, to be honest with you. As I said, they both made very compelling arguments. I was similarly impacted when I went to graduate school to get my master's in real estate. I was taught by a renowned professor by the name of James Graskamp, who lectured extensively on the importance of strategic land policy and the creation of a more livable environment, and how, when it is done well, dramatically drives up property values because people and businesses are drawn to those environments. So now, wherever I go in the U.S. or abroad, I'm always drawn to see how well done architecture, infrastructure, and land use policy improves the quality of a given environment. I myself first came to Sammamish 20 years ago from Los Angeles with my wife and 2 sons, who were 6 and 3 years old at the time. We wanted a better community and school system for our boys to grow up in, My wife and I are extremely satisfied with the choice we made to come here. The community was extremely inviting due to the high number of transplants like ourselves, as well as the fact that they located here for the very same reason that we came, to give their children a better life in terms of safety, quality schools, and a beautiful natural environment. Sammamish has exceeded my expectations in terms of what I came for, and I've been very impressed with public works projects like the library, the YMCA, and the development of the civic complex. My only complaint over the last 20 years would be the loss of natural areas, but that's the price of success. But I do heartily endorse the city's efforts to preserve large trees. It would be hypocritical of me as a real estate professional to stand in the way of someone else looking to maximize the profit potential of his property. My hope is the city can influence remaining property owners within the developable land towards uses that can enhance the livability of the city, as well as promote the profitability of their development plan. I do not consider the two goals to be mutually exclusive of one another.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. Nandini Gupta.
Hello, Honorable Council members and Commission. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to come and present myself for the position in Planning Commission. I have been living in this area since 2011, and currently I work in Costco Wholesale as a privacy and compliance analyst. I have served in various volunteer-led organizations and boards like School PTSs, North America Fashion Week, Global Women Festivals, multicultural festivals, which yearly is hosted in Lake Sammamish State Park, COVID Health Force, Diversity and Inclusion Boards in Greater Seattle area. But my heart and soul lies in the city of Sammamish, which now I call as a home, and for 11 years. It's a suburban, vibrant, natural look and immense recreational opportunities, which stole my heart, and I have been trying to connect and get involved in developmental work related to the city so that I can cater the needs of diverse and growing population. I understand that there is a difference in governance through government bodies and the corporate world. But here I would like to focus on the similarity they have. The challenges are similar, as in both we deal with resources which are usually limited, like people, funds, environment, and technical resources. We need to find a correct balance of using these resources to fit our needs and wants in an economically feasible and culturally sustainable environment. From my past work experience, I have learned to embrace change and have adaptive thinking. The global pandemic is such example, which brought changes in our lifestyles at home as well as work. We need to constantly look for alignment to these changes. At Costco, I work with different stakeholders, businesses, vendors, technical and legal teams to achieve alignment in order to have a successful project delivered within a defined time frame. People management is another focus area of mine. I have owned PR and travel consultancies for 3 years, and my business grew because of people connection and relationship building. We need to develop our people as our assets. I actively participate in training and mentoring programs at my work as well as NGOs I volunteer. I started a newsletter for our community to increase awareness of the work in the neighborhood, define team values, norms, and have built connections through social media. Empowering people, allowing them to be more creative and entrepreneurial, proves to be a long-term asset for any governing body. Hereby, I would like to offer my expertise of being a people's person and my project management skills to help hone the city of Sammamish and contribute towards a socio-economic development and be a part of Planning Commission at position 7. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right, Council, I will open it up and entertain a motion. Councilmember Howe.
I'd like to nominate John Backman for the Pizzopins position.
I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussions?
I can speak to that.
Yeah.
Briefly, just, I'm impressed, well, number one, thank you all for applying, because yay team, you all have wonderful experience and interest in serving the city. And keep in mind, when this position for planning commission is filled, there may be others that open up. So please, stay and pay attention to what's going on here, because we'd love to have you involved. The reason why I'm interested in John for this role is certainly his background and experience is significant. And I think that in particular, I love the Parks Department background because I know some of the people from King County Parks. They're just terrific professional individuals. I think you'd be a balanced voice for the Planning Commission.
Councilmember Stewart, did you have?
Yeah. I also want to thank everyone. Actually, there will be 2 positions in January of 2023 that the terms will expire, and so there'll be another application process. So I do definitely encourage you to stay involved, because it's great to see so many highly qualified, interested residents. So thank you all for being here. Mr. Bachman's experience, though, we are in the middle of a comp plan update, and his experience in the parks, his experiences working with land use and permitting, with the collaboration amongst the cities, and just the knowledge of all of the types of code and processes will significantly help our planning commission and our staff during this really, really heavy lift. So I think for those reasons, I think it's really great that someone with your vast experience is willing to come and give that back to our community during this really important time. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Council, and thank you to all the applicants. All those in favor to appoint John Bachman, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, by a vote of 7-0, congratulations. You have been appointed. Thank you. Thank you all. All right, next we have presentations and proclamations.
Could we have like a 5-minute break? Is
A
that
5-minute
possible?
break, yes. Yeah, let's be back at, let's do like 8:05.
Excellent.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you. All right, it is 8:05. If we can get everybody back. All right, and I did hear that we actually need to pass the resolution to move on for the commission appointment. So I will entertain a motion to pass Resolution 2022-968.
I move that we pass resolution
2020-96.
2022-968,
Perfect.
Second.
And then do we need to say by adding his name, or is that sufficient?
including John Bachman in said resolution.
Second. Oh, second. Perfect. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor to pass that resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, 7-0, resolution moving on. All right, Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. Do I have any interest of anyone that would like to read this proclamation? Okay, and I have a paper copy too if anyone needs to read it. All right, thank you, Deputy Mayor Lamb.
Proclamation for Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. Whereas each year in the United States, more than 15,780 children from birth to 19 years old are diagnosed with cancer, equal to about 42 childhood cancer diagnoses each day, and whereas approximately 1 in 285 children in the United States will be diagnosed with cancer before their 20th birthday, with this number increasing each year, and whereas each year worldwide there are more than 300,000 new childhood cancer diagnoses, equal to about every 3 minutes a family will hear the words, "Your child has cancer." And whereas Although the 5-year survival rate for childhood cancers has reached 84%, nearly 1,500 American children under the age of 19 still die each year from cancer, making it the leading killer of children by disease. And whereas 2/3 that do survive will face at least one chronic health condition later on in life, not limited, but including heart, liver, and lung damage, infertility, secondary cancers, and growth deficits. And whereas the causes of childhood cancer are largely unknown and more studies are needed to understand which treatments work best for children, and whereas cancer treatment for children often must differ from traditional adult treatments to take into account children's developmental need and other factors, and whereas hundreds of children are being treated for cancer in Washington state with locations at Seattle Children's Hospital in Seattle, Mary Bridge Hospital in Tacoma, and Shriners Hospitals for Children in Spokane. And whereas Washington is a caring state and has community that supports children and families, now therefore the mayor, on behalf of the Sammamish City Council, do hereby proclaim September 2022 as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month.
All right, thank you so much, Deputy Mayor. Next, we have Welcoming Week. Do I have anyone that will read? Councilmember Stewart, thank you so much. Do you need the? Sure. Cool.
Proclamation Welcoming Week, September 9 through 18, 2022. Whereas Sammamish is home to people of all backgrounds, including those who were not born here but now call it home, Sammamish's success depends on making sure that all residents feel welcome. New residents are a vital part of our community along with our longtime residents, bringing ideas, starting businesses, serving in civic roles, working in critical industries, and contributing to the vibrant diversity that we value. Whereas, to capitalize on diversity as an asset, our community must strive to create a culture and policies that ensure everyone can belong and thrive. That includes addressing disparities, countering hate, understanding history, and helping neighbors come together. Our community has faced structures, systems, and policies that discriminate against residents who were born in other countries, are of color, indigenous, LGBTQ+, and other identities. Whereas disparities in life outcomes exist along these lines and others in Sammamish. While those most directly impacted are residents who are discriminated against, whose life outcomes are, on average, more adverse with these identities, all of our residents are adversely affected. Anti-Blackness, racism, xenophobia, and all forms of othering threaten our collective well-being, health, and prosperity. Regardless of where we are born or how we identify, we are all residents of Sammamish, and our lives are interdependent. It is time to come together and build communities where every resident has the opportunity to thrive and contribute. By fostering a welcoming environment for all, regardless of immigration status, race, ethnicity, place of origin, English language proficiency, religion, income, gender, sexual orientation, differing abilities, age, and other factors, we enhance Sammamish's health, economic prosperity, and well-being for current and future generations. Now and therefore, Mayor Clark, on behalf of the Sammamish City Council, proclaimed the week of September 9 through 18, 2022, Welcoming Week, and call on our residents to reach across lines of difference and participate in one or more of the Welcoming Week events across Washington. We also call on business leaders, civic groups, government agencies, and community institutions to undertake their own initiatives alongside Sammamish's Beyond Welcoming Week to make the region a more welcoming place for new and long-term residents alike.
Great, thank you so much. All right, next we have unfinished business. So I believe this is going to Anjali. for the approval of Inglewood Middle School MOU acceptance with Lake Washington School District for athletic field improvements.
Deputy Mayor, Mr. City Manager. I'm Anjali Maya, Director of Parks, Recreation and Facilities. And I'm actually going to hand this topic right over to Kevin Teague, our Deputy Director who oversees all park planning, to introduce, and Michelle Arab, our Project Manager, will make the presentation.
Great, thank you, Anjali. I'm hoping also that Brian Buck from the Lake Washington School District can be promoted to a panelist as well. So thank you, Anjali, and thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council. As Anjali mentioned, my name is Kevin Teague. I'm your Deputy Director for Parks, Recreation and Facilities. Back in February of this year, Council gave Parks the direction to move forward with the athletic field development at Inglewood Middle School. As part of our process to do that, we need to enter into a Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, with the Lake Washington School District. And tonight, we are bringing that to you for your consideration. Some of you may recall that back in 2021, we brought a draft MOU for the Inglewood Middle School to Council for consideration. And at that time, Council provided some very helpful feedback. And that input has been included in this version of the MOU. So I'd like to introduce our newest park project manager, Michelle Arab. Michelle is a licensed landscape architect with many years of public and private experience. And we are very happy to have her as our project manager for the city. Also with us tonight is Brian Buck with the Lake Washington School District, and Brian is the Executive Director for Support Services with the district and our direct contact for this project. And with that, I will turn it over to Michelle, and I'll come back to help answer some questions at the end. Thank you. Go ahead, Michelle.
Great. Thank you, Kevin, and good evening, everyone, Madam Mayor, council members, and City Manager. Tonight, we will briefly review the project background and preferred athletic field design, look at preliminary project costs and funding, review the Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, with the Lake Washington School District, the timeline and next steps, and seek input, questions, and direction. Earlier this year, on February 15th, Council accepted the feasibility study at Inglewood Middle School as complete, selected a preferred layout option, and prioritized the athletic field development at Inglewood Middle School. On June 7th of this year, Council authorized a contract with D.A. Hogan and Associates for design and construction administration services. And tonight we are seeking approval for the MOU with the Lake Washington School District for athletic field improvements at Inglewood School. We'll begin by briefly reviewing the project background. The school and athletic facilities were constructed in 1991. In 2004, the city entered into an interlocal agreement, or ILA, with the Lake Washington School District for shared field use. In 2013, an athletic field improvement project at Inglewood Middle School was identified in the city's 2013 to 2018 Park CIP. By 2018, the Inglewood Middle School athletic field improvements were noted as the third highest priority project. In 2020, the city took responsibility for scheduling the school district athletic fields within the city. And on February 15th of this year, Council prioritized the Inglewood Middle School athletic field development and selected a preferred option. As previously mentioned, the city and the school district entered into an ILA in 2004. The ILA lays out the terms for joint use of the school district's facilities within the city. The ILA has already proven to be a successful model with the city and school district partnered to redevelop underutilized fields. For example, at Eastlake High School, 3 community fields were redeveloped under this agreement. The city maintains and schedules the fields, with the school having priority during school hours and the city having priority on evenings and weekends. With flat land being scarce in the city, these partnerships provide opportunities to expand and improve existing, developed, and sometimes underutilized athletic facilities in order to maximize the use for school and community-based activities. This partnership with the school district is also fitting with the recommendations of our PRO plan to address demands for athletic fields. As a reminder, here's a site map. Inglewood Middle School is located in the northeast part of the city on the north side of Northeast 8th Street. The existing conditions include drive lanes and parking, a single baseball field, a single softball field, football field and track, and 6 tennis courts. On February 15, 2022, Council selected a preferred athletic field design. Here is the selected design. The football field and track have shifted to the north or to the left on the screen, making room for 2 synthetic multi-purpose fields that will accommodate football, soccer, and lacrosse. The track was originally going to have 6 lanes, but it just recently changed at the request of the school district to include 8 lanes. The fields to the south will accommodate a 200-foot softball field and a 300-foot baseball field with batting cages, bullpens, and dugouts. All the fields will be lit and a restroom will be added. Now let's review the preliminary project costs. This past April, DA Hogan and Associates updated the estimated project costs based on the feasibility study. The updated cost total is $13.8 million for the city and almost $3 million for the school district. This is a notable change from the first estimate done in November 2020. However, there are reasons for this change. Here we have a side-by-side comparison of the costs from November 2020 and April 2022. The city costs have increased by close to $3 million. This updated estimate reflects cost increases in labor, materials, and fuel, which have impacted construction all around the world. The consultant team is doing their best to estimate these changes. As well, the previous cost did not include escalation, which is now incorporated into the cost planning. There are adequate funds in the upcoming draft CIP fund to accommodate this increase. $13.8 million is currently allocated in the draft 2023-2024 Park CIP budget for the Inglewood Middle School synthetic turf and field renovation project, and is inclusive of all planning, design, and construction costs. We'll now look at the MOU between the city and the school district. In 2021, when staff brought the Inglewood Middle School feasibility study to City Council, we had a draft MOU between the school district and the city for the development of athletic fields at Inglewood Middle School. This revised and finalized MOU highlights that the city is the lead agency for design, permitting, and construction. The city is responsible for the design and construction costs of the athletic fields, lighting, site work, and associated stormwater treatment, and half of the restroom costs. The school district is responsible for the design and construction of the 8-lane track and associated stormwater treatment, and the other half of the restroom costs. We amended the duration of the agreement from 10 years to 20 years, or 2 turf life cycles, whichever comes first. The MOU also establishes that after year 10, or the first life cycle, the city and school district will coordinate the design and replacement of the synthetic turf. A termination clause was added to protect the city in the event that the school district were to terminate the agreement before the 20-year term has expired, and outlines that they will reimburse the city a proportionate and prorated amount of the construction costs. As well, prior to the execution of the amendment to the ILA, both parties reserve the right to not enter into the addendum due to reasons such as cost, project challenges, or an inability to agree upon the terms. The agreement also establishes financial responsibilities for ongoing utility costs and stormwater, maintenance, and capital replacement, as well as repairs. It also addresses operational issues for shared use hours and field use during school events. The anticipated timeline was updated this year in April as well. Design is currently underway with construction documents and permitting wrapping up by the spring of 2023. Next summer, the contractor will be selected and construction will start, and the field should be open by late spring of 2024. The next steps include executing the MOU with the school district and to start working on the ILA amendment later this year. So now we open it up to any of your input or questions regarding this project and the MOU.
Great, thank you. Council, I'll open up to you. We might have to close the presentation.
Oh, sure, of course.
If there is a hand, I'm sorry. Councilmember Howe.
Thank you. My question is on the map you just showed, you did have I think where the lights are supposed to be. And is that right? The little orange circles? Okay.
Yeah.
But that's all still hypothetical. Is that right? Because we really don't know how this is going to work, right?
We're still in the beginning phases of the design, and so the light studies are something that need to happen. And at that time, there will also be community engagement with the neighbors. Yeah.
Right. That was my memory also. Out of curiosity, if you couldn't do the lights, how much money would you save?
We do have that in our
I'm sure it
estimate from the consultant.
I'm sure you have
I don't know that we've got it at the tip of our fingers at this point.
That's okay. That's okay. I just wanted to kind of get an idea. And if other delay, okay, I know everyone's doing the best that they can to avoid construction delays, but there's not a lot you could do with the supply chain issues.
Right.
What are the soft costs? Again, can you just?
Are you asking like how much, or
Yeah.
what would they include?
Well, what do the soft costs include? Is that the buffer in case there's additional delays?
The soft costs would be our design fees, permitting fees. But we do have a contingency.
There we go.
As well. Yes.
Okay. And how much is that contingency?
I believe it's 10%. Isn't that right,
Okay.
Michelle?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Councilmember O'Farrell.
Hi, everyone. I had a quick question about the tree retention. Just looking at the movement of the multi-purpose field further into that corner, will we lose, or have we any idea, will we lose a lot of those trees on that site? And if we do, are there plans then for replacement? And does construction of this nature have to adhere to the City of Sammamish's tree retention policy?
It does, and we are actually currently, where we're at in the design is determining exactly how many of those trees will need to be removed. Obviously, we're trying to impact as few as possible. I mean, we not only is, from the standpoint of tree retention, but then also when we talk about the field lighting to provide additional screening for the neighbors, we want to maintain as much of that buffer that's existing with some of those larger trees as possible. That being said, we do know that some trees will have to come down in order to make this fit. And in which case we'll mitigate per the city requirements and plant additional trees for that those that get removed.
Okay. And I think we probably went through a similar thing when Pine Lake was rebuilt, Pine Lake Middle School was rebuilt. And just from going in and out of that location myself, the new plantings that they seem to be coming into their own now, and they're looking great, and they look like they've been maintained really well, and they're growing fast and furious. So even though I know initially it might be a shock when some of our older trees go away, it seems like what goes in the replacement seems to be really nice and working out really well. And kind of on that same vein, because of the rebuild in Pine Lake, and they tore down the old school and they rebuilt a new one, do we know if there is a plan for a similar situation with Inglewood Middle School? And if so, how would that kind of impact improving the playing fields? Because I know with Pine Lake, they kind of did it all together at the same time. And I know that's a different school district and probably different situation. But do we know if there's any plans for that building to be renovated or to be rebuilt in any way?
It's a great question, and we have discussed this fairly extensively with the school district. Brian, would you like to respond to that?
Sure. Yeah, currently we do not have plans for a replacement project at Inglewood Middle School. And so this project within the 20 years, we don't foresee a replacement where we tear down and build on the fields.
Okay. Okay, but are they likely to make any improvements to the building itself, even if they're not tearing it and rebuilding? Are they likely to improve it in any way?
Yeah, we likely have life cycle maintenance or capital replacements of building infrastructure, but currently we do not have plans for a full replacement within the 20-year period.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's my questions.
Great. Councilmember Indapire? Oh, your volume isn't working. You might need to connect your audio. Maybe now try hit unmute. It might just be headphones. All right, I'll go to Councilmember Stewart, if that's all right, and then we'll try to get you, or yeah, you can email or
Chat.
us, or well, yeah, or chat. Any questions?
Great, thank you. The escalation costs, I'm assuming that's meant to be like inflation? Is that what that's?
Yes.
Okay, because it was a really big number, but that makes sense. And then what's the timeline for when you think you would have the amendment actually done, and would that come back to council for approval?
Yes, it would come back to council for approval. Michelle, do you want to speak to the timing of that?
Sure. So if the MOU is approved, then we will start working on that this fall into the winter, and hopefully have it in place in the first part of 2023 or the first quarter. I mean, that's ideally what we would do.
Excellent, because it looks like the devil's kind of in the details, right, in terms of, you know, the cost sharing for maintenance and things. I'm definitely supportive of the 8-lane track, because that makes it more, that makes it work for the track and field folks. I'm assuming that the school district would cover all costs associated with the track still?
That is correct, yeah.
Excellent. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And do we have anything else? Councilmember Indapire, I do see your chat. We still don't have your volume, unfortunately. All right. And I believe you are looking for a motion here. I will entertain a motion.
I move we direct the city manager to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the school district.
Second. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I think the
Anyone
staff
speak to that?
has covered it.
Great. All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? I think, Ratuja, I think you were an aye. Okay. All right, by a vote of 7-0, that MOU is approved.
Thank you, Council.
Yeah.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you all. Okay, next, I believe we have Audrey coming on, stormwater rate study and draft CIP.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council. I am Audrey Starcy, the Acting Public Works Director. With me tonight to present the draft rate model for the 2022 Storm and Surface Water Utility Rate Study is our Senior Stormwater Program Manager, Stephanie Sullivan, as well as Tagi Acker with FCS Group, the city's consultants. Tagi, whenever you are able to bring up the presentation, we can get started. And as Tagi is pulling that up, I can go ahead and kind of introduce this rate study. So this will be the fourth meeting that we have brought this forth to council this year. And so at some prior meetings, we did discuss fiscal policies, which were adopted and approved by council. We also went over how stormwater billing at Sammamish works, as well as some operational considerations and some proposed capital programs. That was honestly my first slide. So if there's any questions for us before we get going, I'm happy to answer those while we pull up the presentation.
Any questions so far?
Perfect.
All right, here it comes.
All right, thank you so much. So next slide, please. Thank you. Perfect. As I mentioned, we have brought this forth to council several times, and please let us know throughout this evening if you do have questions along the way. Stephanie will provide just a very brief overview of our 23 through 2028 stormwater capital plan. We plan to bring back that full plan in a few weeks for council's consideration in a public hearing. This evening, we'll primarily be focusing on presenting you with a draft rate model for the utility. We have prepared 3 levels of service for your consideration. As we walk through the presentation this evening, we'd like you to just keep in mind that this is a draft model. We anticipate there will be some changes in the next few weeks, but those should be minor changes. Could be a difference of 0.25% or 0.5%, so fairly minor, but just wanted to keep that in mind. The other thing is we're walking through the model is that we have built in some flexibility with our capital programs. So we are seeking council preferences this evening. So we would really like some feedback if council prefers to fund any of these levels of service with an all cash model, or if you are open to considering other resources. And that'll help us inform the draft capital plan as we bring that back and finalize our rate model. Finally, we are seeking your concurrence with our approach to date and feedback on our levels of service. And at the end of the meeting, we'll be asking if you have a preferred levels of service. Again, we can bring back that draft plan, capital plan for your consideration on September 20th. Next slide, please. At this point, I will have Stephanie introduce the stormwater capital plan, and then Tagi will begin his presentation on the draft rate model.
Thanks, Audrey. Good evening, Council, City Manager. This image obviously isn't meant to be legible, but it's to give you a preview of the formatting that we are using for the stormwater CIP update. And so you might notice it's pretty similar to the transportation capital improvement plan. And so this helps us look out that 6-year window to plan ahead for the funding that's going to be needed, and then using that in our rate study to set rates. So right now, the rate study and the 2023-24 budget planning is the perfect time for us to update and adopt the new CIP. Our last update to the 2017 to 2022 CIP was in August of 2020 when we were preparing for the 21-22 budget cycle. And this current draft we've developed by first removing completed projects, updating current projects, and finally adding new projects. And those are coming from basin plans we've done over the past several years, as well as the retrofit plan. And any requests or maintenance issues we address through regular inspection. While this is our first take on the 23 to 28 stormwater CIP, it's bringing over active projects and builds on those plans that we've been working on. And it is a planning document that we use as a tool to estimate that funding that will be needed. And feedback, as Audrey mentioned, from tonight's presentation will help us refine this capital improvement list and prepare for the hearing on the 20th. Go ahead, Tagi.
All right, thank you, Stephanie. So with that, we'll get into the rate impacts of the various levels of service that we put together in coordination with Audrey and Stephanie and other city staff. So we'll provide a couple of introductory slides, and then we'll get into the revenue requirement results. And when we say, revenue requirement, what we are referring to is when we forecast out the operating and capital costs of the surface water utility, what revenue adjustments might the utility need to cover those costs, not only next year, but for the next 6 years. That's sort of our study period, is that 2022 through 2028. And as Audrey alluded to earlier, we came up with 3 rate scenarios, or in other words, levels of service. Each of those has unique operating, programmatic, and capital needs, and as a result, specific rate forecast needs by each level of service. So we'll kind of share what those inputs are, and then what the rate impacts are, and how those rates would compare to other cities and jurisdictions within the region. So the primary funding source for the surface water utility is stormwater fees. Currently, residential customers on their property tax statements pay a storm and surface water fee of $396 per year per parcel. So that's equivalent to about $33 per month. For other developed parcels, non-residential, that fee is $396 per 3,500 impervious square feet. So scales up based on the size of the development and the impervious area associated with those developments. So when we're putting together a rate forecast, we're essentially trying to recover the cost of providing storm and surface water service. So that's 2 primary cost buckets. You have your operating and maintenance costs and your capital costs. So for the operating and maintenance costs, or O&M, those are costs like salaries and benefits, supplies and materials, routine maintenance, operating programs, street sweeping, building costs, as that's provided by King County. And then on the capital cost side, these are capital programs, replacement projects, and in some cases, the stormwater portion of transportation projects for the transportation plan. So when we put that all together, we look at your fiscal policy achievement. Are you making good on your operating and capital reserve targets? Are you covering your forecasted operating and maintenance costs? And then those last 2 rectangles there have to do with the capital program. Whether you're cash funding it or using cash plus debt, there may be a debt service component that you need to cover with annual rate revenues in addition to that rate or cash funded component. And when you put that all together, that's your annual revenue need, and we forecast that over the next 6 years. So in terms of the levels of service or our rate scenarios, we have the baseline level of service, the enhanced level of service, and the optimal level of service. So starting up at the top, the baseline level of service essentially maintains the city's status quo. It's based on the adopted Stormwater Comprehensive Plan. It funds your current projects. It helps provide funding for the city to meet the NPDES permit requirements and provide some funding for relatively small repairs or flood mitigation projects, as well as a proactive ditch maintenance program. Moving on down the list here, you have the enhanced or middle level of service. That funds not only the baseline level of service, but also adds several capital projects and programs, mainly focusing on water quality, but also allows the city to implement some asset management components as well. And then lastly, the optimal level of service funds what you see in baseline, what you see in enhanced, but also adds a few additional capital projects and programs, and in some cases allows for the faster completion of some of those capital programs by providing more funding sooner. So here's a pretty detailed comparison of the different levels of service. We won't go through all of this in detail here tonight, more meant to be a takeaway for you to review later, but wanted to sort of outline how we put this together. So we have the different levels of service across the top: baseline, enhanced, and optimal. And then listed below that are the operating and capital components that were put into the rate forecast model. So you have some more of your operating staffing up at the top, and then capital projects here at the bottom. In the event that there's no change in a level of service, you can see, for example, storm facility restoration program, no change in enhanced or optimal. It's shown in gray text. So we tried to call out significant changes or additions towards the bottom in that bold text. So for example, in the baseline level of service, you can see $3 million of funding over that 6-year horizon. Under enhanced, that funding increases to nearly $6 million, and under optimal increases that total 6-year funding to just under $9 million. So that gives you an idea of how to read that chart. So again, don't want to go through all this detail here. I think Audrey and Stephanie did a good job writing up that narrative in the staff report in the agenda. So let's get moving into the results. So back in July, we had a issue paper that we provided a presentation on, capital funding tools. And this was one of the graphics that we put together just as an illustration. These are not the city's numbers, but, what if the city had a capital program that had some, ups and downs and then a big spike sort of in the middle? If this is your revenue available for capital projects from annual rates, how do you fund that big spike in capital projects? And at that point really was a illustration to, get you thinking. When we work with city staff to, forecast out those capital projects from the capital planning tool, it turns out there really was a big spike in capital projects. You can see there, the combination of baseline or gold plus the green, the enhanced level service, and then the optimal, the purple portion of the bar. There are some significant capital needs, and it peaks in the next 2 to 3 years. So just wanted to remind you of this graphic here where we said, if there's a big spike in capital projects, it may require borrowing to help smooth out that large capital expense. And if there's, no willingness to borrow, you may want to consider deferring capital to help keep rates smoothed out in sort of an equal increase for each level of service. So anyways, this is sort of the capital program, and you can see, primarily the costs are in the baseline, but there are some additions here you can see in the green and purple portions of these stacked bars that show some additional capital projects added at each level of service. So in total, the baseline level of service, it's about $39 million of capital over that 6-year period. minimal borrowing, about $3.5 million over that same period. The enhanced level of service is about $49 million of capital over that 6-year period. You can see here more surface water management fees, but also quite a bit more debt to help smooth out some of those larger capital projects. And then lastly, the optimal level of service, about $62 million of capital. That would be about $17.5 million of borrowing. So it kind of gives you an idea of the scale of the capital funded in each level of service and how those capital projects and programs are forecast to be funded and the changes in the borrowing associated with that. So in terms of rate impacts, we have 23 through 28 shown here, and then the different levels of service. The baseline level of service would increase by about $1 per year. Just a reminder, the current rate, while billed annually, is equivalent to about $33 per year for a single family customer. So by the end of that period in 2028, adding $1 per year, roughly, that equivalent rate would be about $39 per month. Under the enhanced level of service, it's an increase of $2 to $3 per year. So in 2022, $33, going up to $35 in 2023, eventually getting up to $47 by 2028. And then lastly, the optimal level of service adds about $3 to $5 per year, depending on the year, ending at about $57 per month for a typical single-family customer. And this table, kind of brings it all together. You can see that dollar per year increase to that monthly equivalent rate here is associated with about a 3% increase per year. The enhanced level of service, that $2 to $3 per year, is about a 6% increase per year. So showing the dollars and the percentages here. And then the optimal level of service, adding $3 to $4 per month. It's about 9.5% per year. So under baseline, borrowing, as a reminder, $3.5 million. Enhanced would be just over $10 million, and optimal would be about $17.5 million of borrowing. And in terms of what you could fund from annual rates by 2028, baseline would essentially maintain your status quo. Currently, you can fund about $3.4 million of capital projects with your current level of rates and current level of operating expenditures. So that sort of maintains that status quo. Under the enhanced level of service, while you do borrow more, you would be able to rate fund more capital at about $5 million per year by 2028. And then lastly, the optimal level of service, you can fund about $7 million of capital. So it kind of gives you an idea of where the capital funding is coming for these totals here that we went over on a previous slide. And then before we get to the summary slides, we have that rate comparison that I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation. You can see a whole host of cities, King County there in the middle, and then Sammamish's current rate, equivalent to $33 per month. So with that baseline, enhanced or optimal, would add anywhere from $1 to $3 to that monthly rate. So it gives you an idea of how the city's rate currently compares to other cities within the region, but it can be really difficult to compare, one stormwater program to another. Different cities have different mixes of, residential or commercial customers, which if you have a larger commercial base, for example, that can help spread out that cost over a larger number of residential equivalents. So a little bit apples to oranges here, but can be useful comparison to see how those rates compare. And then in terms of next steps, September 20th, there was a public hearing on stormwater CIP. October 18th, the goal would be to adopt a stormwater rate study, adopting a set of rates that correspond to the chosen level of service. And then by December 1st, city would need to notify King County of those rate adjustments, so they have ample time to program those in time for those property tax statements going out next year. And then lastly, we'll be coming back to council with a system development charge. That charge is being updated at this time. That's that charge when there's new development, as they connect to the city stormwater system, they pay that one-time fee that helps offset the cost of capital projects, which can help lessen the burden on current ratepayers. So finally, we're asking for council direction on three main topics. Whether there's a preference of cash funding only, or if there's a preference of helping to mitigate some of those rate increases, like we talked about in the presentation earlier. That does assume some debt funding, which helps keep those rate increases lower than would otherwise be needed if you were entirely cash funding those capital programs. We're asking for direction on the preferred level of service, baseline, enhanced, or optimal, and then direction and eventual decision on adopting a rate plan associated with one of those levels of service. So with that, I think we're at the end of our planned presentation. Wanted to open up for questions, or if Audrey or Stephanie wanted to add anything to that, they're certainly welcome to do at this time.
Thank you, Tagi. That was great. We are just available to answer any questions.
Great. And would you mind stop sharing? Okay, or keep sharing? Councilmember Stewart?
All right, you can't show us all these graphs without us having time ahead. For the math geeks in the room. I just, couple of questions. So you said that currently we charge about $33 per month per residential parcel, and we also charge about $33 per month per 3,500 square feet of impervious surface for non-residential. Is there any thought of sort of bifurcating those and making the non-residential go up higher? And if we did, what kind of an impact could that have on the revenues and be able to offset residential increases?
We didn't look at that under this rate study. In the council packet, there's some history of the rate structure for the city of Sammamish and how it changed from that density of development tiers to now the equivalent service unit approach. And keeping those aligned is pretty typical for stormwater rates, with the thought being, okay, that 3,500 impervious square feet, whether on non-residential or for a typical residential customer, would have a similar impact to the stormwater program in terms of contribution of runoff above sort of natural levels. So it's not too common to have those separated.
Yeah, I just think for commercial, for that 3,500 square feet of impervious surface for commercial, they're making money theoretically off of that impervious surface, whereas we're just living in it. So I don't necessarily have any issue with charging them more a little bit, but I don't know if by doing that, we create a level of complexity, but we don't really materially affect the revenues. So it would be interesting to see that, or to have a sense if that would be a material impact on the revenues. Because the increasing it almost 10% a year on residential customers, that feels high to me. Even though I think that list of projects and that funding isn't necessarily a bad list. And then my other question, just to make sure I understood it clearly, was that we would, let's just say for a moment that we went with the highest level of service. You're suggesting that we would have to increase the rates by 10% a year, and there would still be some chunk that we borrow, but we would pay that borrowed money back with that increase in the rate, or there would be some other thing. I wasn't sure I totally followed that. I don't know.
So with that highest level of service, the 9.5% increase per year over that study period, so through 2028, that assumes that you will borrow about $17 or $18 million, and those rate increases help pay back the principal and interest on whether that's a state loan or revenue bond, but also generates some rate revenue in addition to that debt service that can be used to cash fund capital projects, either same year or saved up in advance for that second or third year.
Okay, so you had a bar graph where you showed like how much money would be coming in from the various sources. So on that bar graph, the rate increases would cover both the stormwater fees and the payback of principal and interest on the borrowed money. Because that wasn't clear from that bar graph, at least not for me. I don't know
Correct.
if you could show that bar
Yeah,
graph again.
I can, yeah. Okay, is that coming through okay?
Yeah, excellent.
This one you had in mind?
So the stormwater fees would cover that borrowed 17.5 million in addition to the other costs. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a good question. And the label, I could see
it was
could be a little
confusing here.
Yeah. So the total optimal level of service funds about $62 million of capital projects. Of that, 17.5 million would come from borrowing, so state loans or revenue bonds. In addition to that would be this sort of middle gold bar, which would be cash funded capital from rates above and beyond what you're borrowing. So it's kind of two components. Rate revenues pay for debt service. They also pay for cash funding of capital in addition to operating costs.
Okay. Is there somewhere where we can see like a breakdown of that in, I don't know, like an Excel form? And you don't have to share it here, but maybe you could send it to us to mull over some of these numbers offline. I don't know that people need to go through my whole thought process here on the dais, but I'm struggling with some of the numbers. Thanks.
Yes, we can certainly do that.
Well, now you've made more questions for me by bringing that up. No.
I'm trying to clarify the math stuff, but this time, yeah.
Councilmember Howe.
Thank you. I'm leaning into the enhanced LOS personally, and just you may have said this and I missed it when you talked about grants or grant the blue bar. Is that an assured grant? Is one you've got, or one you think you might get? And I'm sorry if you've answered that already.
I can answer that. It's a great question. Those are, we only included grants that we have already been awarded. So,
okay.
There's a high likelihood that we may be awarded future grants, but we didn't want to count on that funding with this rate model.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. I personally don't have a problem with using debt to service the enhanced service either. So that's where I land. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Lamb.
Can you pull up the slide that showed the different levels of service and the different projects that were in them? That flashed pretty quickly.
I'll get that up here in just a moment. Okay, there it is. This one here?
Yes. I mean, can you, maybe that's, an additional email to somehow explain what some of these items are. I'm not quite sure what Queen's Bog bioretention is and some of these other things.
We will be bringing back in our draft capital plan. It does include the source of the project, so where that project originated from. In this case, Queen's Bog bioretention just came out of the Laughing Jacobs Basin Plan as a recommended project and ranked very high in that basin plan. So the majority of the projects that you see here came out of either a comprehensive plan that was adopted by council or a basin plan. There are a handful of programs that really include lists of projects that are usually staff identified. The Storm Facility Restoration Program, for example, restores our storm ponds back to their original design. Those are identified through staff inspections, but a majority of the capital programs, the retrofit program, and some of the other projects have originated from a basin plan or a comprehensive plan recommendation.
Okay. I mean, I'm leaning toward the enhanced. I'd still like more information, and I am fine with taking on debt to fund the enhanced.
Councilmember Trine?
Yeah, so I concur with your approach. I like your approach. Thank you. And right now, I would say I don't have a preferred LOS option at this time. And I think the reason why is because of the first question that you're asking there for input is cash funding versus utilizing other resources. And then I'm leaning into the fact that I probably would like to hear from Aaron and Anton about like that debt service concerns me. Because we have, for the most part, been a city as pay as you go. So it's kind of like, okay, I'm going to borrow money, but I have to be able to pay it back. How long is that going to take me? At what cost? So I just have a concern there. And then Audrey, I just have a quick question for you because I'm pretty sure that the enhanced, well, all of this is based on, or hold on, let me rephrase that some of this is based on our basin plan studies that we've been doing. And so I encourage that we continue to do fund the basin planning, because that's the data that gives us the information to move us forward. The second is that the retrofitting needs to stay, in my opinion, needs to stay in the plan. No matter which one we choose, what level of service, that needs to be included. So retrofit projects. And then how you prioritize them, it is important I think it would be important to the residents in here for the council to understand how that prioritization takes place. And then the last thing that I would like to bring up, and I don't really see it in the list, even though I really like those lists, enjoyed trying to weeding through that, but is the increase or decrease of flow control needs to be addressed throughout the city to address climate change. And I think that, if I'm not mistaken, I mean, we have some studies on some of our basin plans that would give us the data that we need to actually make that kind of decision in a way that would protect the streams and subsequently the little red fish and subsequently the lake. So the protection of the streams, of course, is protecting the wildlife that we so enjoy here in Sammamish. So if there's not, I don't see it in those lists, but if you could address that when you come back to us about the flow control, that would really help me out in making a decision as to what level of service option and then how much money I'm willing to approve or disapprove with the help of my fellow council members. Thank you.
Councilmember O'Farrell?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm leaning more towards the enhanced level of service, but I would like to understand the debt issue associated with that and kind of how we would finance that, because I'm unsure about how that works. So I'd like to kind of hear a bit more about that. And I would like to see, and I agree with quite a bit of what Councilmember Trine was talking about, the retrofitting and the prioritization of those projects. I liked what it had to say about that and about the climate change. So my biggest concern in kind of just understanding the decisions that we have to make is if we have to go into debt, if we're going to borrow, what does that look like? And I just kind of need that aspect of it explained more clearly to me so I can make a better decision. But I'm leaning more likely towards the enhanced LOS.
And I'm going to jump in here, if you don't mind. So I agree. If we can do enhanced with debt, looks great, potentially. As far as the cost to our residents, I'm kind of like, oh, that's a lot. As well, by I think 2028 is when it turns to 47 a month. So yeah, I don't know if we can increase impervious surface instead. That would be great. But yeah, thank you all. Councilmember Stewart?
Yeah, I just want to get clarity on what we have to decide on or give you direction on tonight. So it feels like you wanted us to say what rate increase we were leaning towards. And I think that's what people were going with, like enhanced LOS, and then that would put us in the, basically increase by $24 a year. I don't remember what percentage that was per residential. Is that what you're asking for? Are we trying to zero in on that tonight?
We were hoping to have council guidance on your level of comfort with pursuing debt option as an option for our rate model. And we will be working towards refining that rate model in the next few weeks. And we'll be back to you several times in the next month or two with that final rate model. It was also very important to us to receive any direction towards a level of service so we can prepare a detailed capital plan for you to review it at the September 20th meeting.
Okay, so I'm not totally ready to go with exactly what level of service yet, because for me, the retrofit projects are really important, and it's not clear to me I know that we get an increased dollar amount with each one of those, but until we see the list, it'll be hard to say if, it's like enhanced plus or something like that. So I think we'll have to see that. I'm completely comfortable with the debt. Aaron and I had a great conversation about debt. I'll just throw in my 2 cents. We're in a period of high inflation. So borrowing money now and paying it back later is not a bad deal, because later it won't actually be worth as much. So that's not altogether bad. Obviously, we want to manage debt. We manage our debt at home very carefully, so we won't spend willy-nilly. One other question, though, around that is, how long are we looking at that debt service? Like, is it only for the 5 years that the CIP, or however long the CIP is for, or is it like a 20-year bond? I think the term of the debt is certainly important and significant.
I can take that one, Audrey.
Thank you.
For the debt for our rate model, we had assumed a 20-year repayment period.
Okay.
So while the forecast goes for the 6 years, we're assuming it's based on a 20-year repayment for those borrowings.
Okay, so that is also something to keep in mind, that like every 6 years we could be adding another 20 years of debt. That kind of changes things. And then my last question, when you show the different levels of service, for the baseline you had 1 FTE, for the other 2 you had 2 FTEs. Do we really think we can do all these projects in enhanced or optimal if we had all of this funding? Because I know oftentimes we kind of bite off more than we can chew, and we think we're going to do all these projects, but we don't really get to them. And so again, if we're going to borrow, we need to be really careful, because if we're borrowing the money and we don't have the staff to actually get them done, that's not good. And I see Aaron shaking his head vigorously in the back of the room. So that would be a big factor for me on, how much we fund with debt to make sure that we really can get them done. I would argue that doing them sooner is better, because again, they're going to cost less now than they're going to cost later. So let's front load to the extent that we can. But that may be, we may have limitations there with personnel, with materials, with construction companies, et cetera. So I think there's a lot that factors into this to decide, but debt in and of itself is not necessarily bad. Thanks.
Deputy Mayor Lamb?
Councilmember Indipuri had a comment in the chat that I just wanted to read. She writes, I definitely support basic, but want to understand about enhanced services we are offering to our residents. There seems to be some higher costs for land acquisition, which I'd like to understand.
I can speak to the property acquisition line. So that is, I believe it's SWA, but it was included as a recommendation in our 2016 Storm and Surface Water Comprehensive Plan. That plan, I believe, gave us a range. I forgot what the lower amount was, but it was up to $1 million a year. So it gave us quite a range to consider for the future. And so we built in different increments into that level of service for your consideration. But that's where that property acquisition does come from our comprehensive plan.
Great, thank you. Is there any other questions or comments, or do you all feel like you have some sort of direction?
I do want to throw in a thank you. I know there's a lot of work that went into this, so thanks.
Thank you for the wonderful feedback this evening. I think that gave us a great step forward, and we'll plan to bring back a capital plan and a draft rate model, likely at that enhanced level of service, and along with answers to your questions this evening. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Okay, so next we have a human resources update from Mark.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members. I'm here this evening to provide an HR update for you. And let me share my screen. Okay, can that be seen okay?
We don't have anything yet, Mark.
Yeah. Still no?
Nothing yet.
Okay, apologies.
You could also probably just email it to someone to display it for you, maybe. Oh, there it goes. Thank you.
It is usually downhill for me once I master this. Okay. Thank you. Apologize for the rough beginning. So we're going to talk this evening a little bit about human resources, team staffing, take a look at the organizational structure within the unit, talk a little bit about the recruiting and hiring efforts that we've been undertaking over the past period of time, look at some projects that we've been doing. I'll share some information about the recent HR assessment that we did, and then update you on some progress on some of the results of that. So in the fall of 2021, the 2 HR employees that were here with the city separated from city employment. And as a result of that, there was just a new LTE HR assistant as the only human resources asset for the city. As a stopgap measure, the city manager's office senior management analyst, Mike Sugg, assisted HR, and a consultant functioned as the HR manager for a period of time. On the first part of January, the LTE HR assistant was promoted to a full-time employee as an HR assistant. In the first part of March, the city hired an HR analyst with significant HR experience. And a little while after that, contracted with Robert Half for a temp HR assistant, who has since been converted to an LTE HR position. And on the 21st of March, the admin services director, myself, was hired. As a result of these additions, Mike was able to return to his normal duties, and the consultant ended her engagement with the city at the end of June. So the current org structure has underneath the admin services director the 3 HR components that we just talked about. And it's really vital that we maintain those 3 assets. It allows us to do and to keep up on the hiring that we're doing, along with working through the normal day-to-day HR functions that come up that allow us to service our employees and the rest of the departments, as well as take on some of the projects that we will be talking about in a couple of minutes. And, as part of the budget process, there will be an ask to be able to secure that 3rd position. Moving forward, on the right-hand side of the screen, we'll be working towards the proposed future structure that has an HR manager placed above HR to really give HR that daily voice and direction, and to really be the conduit to the rest of the city departments to ensure that we're providing the type of service that they need. Since January 1 through August 15th, there have been 75 vacancies within the city. However, only 36 of those were full-time regular employees. 29 of those have been filled. The other 39 were limited term, part-time, seasonal, or intern positions. And of those, 29 of those were filled. This chart highlights primarily the HR work that's done as a result of those numbers. And if you'll take a look at the column on the far left that has the numbers under FTE, it shows the 36 FTE openings that generated 327 applications and resulted in 82 interviews, 18 second interviews, 87 reference checks, 28 background investigations that were done, and 29 people were hired. In addition to those 29 people that were hired, we did have 5 additional individuals who, over the course of that time, declined offers for a variety of reasons. You'll note also in that chart that the other largest number of openings is under seasonal, with the majority of those being our lifeguards over the summer. This bar graph quickly distributes the FTE vacancies, the filled positions, and where we're currently working to fill positions by the various departments. And as you might expect, the operational departments of Public Works, Parks and Recreation, and Facilities, and Community Development is really where the bulk of the work is done. We've also been undertaking a number of projects under the philosophy of continuous improvement. We've collected, tracked, and filed the telework agreements based on the telework policy that came into fruition. We've created correspondence and document templates. This allows us to communicate with applicants quicker, provide job offers quicker, and to ensure that all of the appropriate elements, if it's a represented employee versus a non-represented employee, are properly contained within the letters. We've amended the HR hiring policy, and this allows us some flexibility to be able to move as quickly as we responsibly can to identify quality applicants, to move them through our application process, to get them in front of hiring managers, and then to be able to act to offer them jobs and hire them as soon as we've identified that they're the appropriate fit for Sammamish. We've created and delivered implicit bias training to every employee in Sammamish. We've organized and offered active shooter awareness training through a partnership with Sammamish PD. We continue to revamp the new hire orientation process. The individuals in HR had begun that process prior to my arrival, and we're continuing to identify topics where it makes sense while we have them a new employee each time to provide additional orientation information to ensure that they get off to a great start with the city of Sammamish. We've made all of the basic orientation training available to all employees. One of the things we discovered is, by and large, as a result of COVID over the past couple of years, some of the basic training topics that tend to be refreshed on an annual basis just hadn't been over time. Most of those were contained within the same courses that are offered to new applicants or new hires when they start through our orientation process. And so we're going through the process of ensuring that every employee takes those again, so that all city employees start with a baseline of information so that we can set up a schedule and work through those in a consistent way over time. We've created and are working to enhance new supervisor orientation. This was something that was identified as a need to us. And so we're working just as we do with a new employee when somebody is promoted, of being able to bring them in and give them an orientation about their new role within the city, and to identify the skills that we need to help them enhance in order for them to be successful. And we've bolstered the city's safety policy and the committee process. There's some great building blocks there, and through some partnerships with some associations, we're continuing to enhance those. In May of 2022, we contracted with Archbright to conduct a complete HR assessment. And this HR assessment covered all of the essential human resources functions, from the way we recruit and select individuals, to the policies and procedures and practices that we operate under, to our disciplinary processes, compensation structure, and importantly, our record keeping and our reporting. We asked them to ensure that we were operating as a 2022 high functioning HR entity for the city. And they brought us back some results based on these topics of policies and procedures, recruitment and selection, record keeping and reporting, safety, and wage policies and comprehension. And in the first main body part of the report, they identified a whole host of action items, which ran the gamut from continuing to digitize files to adding little enhancements to different policies in the handbook. And the count of those, which totals 27, are outlined by those topics on the left side of the slide. On the right are some of the examples of some of the things that were outlined. We also, very importantly, asked them for a ranked list of significant projects that we should begin to work through. And we wanted to know, when we had the opportunity to begin to do this work, that we were taking off the most important things first, in order, again, to bring us up to a 2022 high quality HR entity. And this slide represents that ranked list. And one of the things I will draw your attention to is, even though it's number 2, it's really the number 1 most important thing that we need to embark on, which is to conduct a classification and compensation study. Many of the things that we spend time on and that occupy a great deal of effort evolve around the fact that we need a modern classification and compensation study. Many of those things that are on that list had been previously identified, and we've made some inroads into a number of them. We had already been putting together plans to centralize the drug testing program. We've begun to do an I-9 audit. The next opportunity for us to report on the EEO4 is next year, and a plan is in place to do that. We've been amending a number of policies, and that work is currently underway. We've recently started a revision to the employee handbook that we will be working on for the next few months. And we are already planning and working through an RFP for a classification and compensation study. And with that, I would take any questions anybody may have.
Deputy Mayor Lamb?
Thanks, Mark. It looks like you've been busy.
The team has been very busy.
I had a couple of questions. The very first one is there was the HR assessment, and how does the DEIB initiative integrate into their assessment? Because, you know, one of the categories was recruitment, and I was wondering how DEIB impacts those processes.
I think it impacts almost every process in
Yeah.
some way or another. When they did the assessment, they recognized, I think much like I talked about before when I was here talking about DEIB, that the city has components of what it typically is made up in a DEIB program, whether it's the language we have on our job notifications to some language that we have in the handbook, but it's a bit piecemeal. What I would anticipate, although I don't want to get ahead of myself since the work is just beginning and ongoing, is that all of those things will be looked at as part of the development of a comprehensive. Basic language, say for within our handbook and within our hiring practices. But again, one of the things that we haven't really had an opportunity to do, which will come with a DEIB program, is assessing if we're getting what we truly want to get for those efforts. In other words, we have the language there, which is the standard conventional language and such, but is it paying off for us in the way that we want it to for our DEIB program? So I think there'll be a lot more to come on that. And I, like I said, I think it permeates through all of those different projects.
Okay, I just had one more question, and that was just looking at your chart, the full-time employee vacancies and filled positions by department. I think you updated it compared to the one that was in the agenda. So some of them have full-time vacancies, and comparing that with filled positions, they don't match. So, for example, in community development, there's 11 vacancies, but they've filled 9, but they're not working to fill anymore. So does that mean the positions, like they don't need the positions anymore, or I'm not clear why they're not working to fill them?
Thanks for asking the question, because I think that probably does look a bit confusing. We do have a couple of positions throughout the city that for some reason or another, the department hasn't asked for an active recruitment on. And it could be that they're assessing how they want to use the FTE. It could be that it's a position that we've had a difficult time attracting applicants on, and it has been out in the past, and we're giving it a period of time where we've taken it down, and then we will begin to actively recruit for it again using a different strategy. Every once in a while, there's a need to do a change of a classification. And so if there's an opening and they're pondering what they might do with it, we hold that until we work through the process with them so that we still have the resource to use for whatever the appropriate position is for their needs. So there's a number of reasons why that could be. And so they won't always match up. You know, the other thing I will say about that chart is that it's very fluid. It probably isn't the same on the 16th of August as it was on the 15th of August, because every day they're working and we're doing interviews in some department. Somebody may have given notice that they're moving on from the city. A couple of people may have started. And so those numbers move daily in most cases as we work through. It can take, a month or 6 weeks to get somebody hired, but then depending upon what their status is, it could take longer than that for them to give a certain amount of notice. They may have had some prior plans depending upon the time of year. And so often, our job in HR is to make sure that we can hire the best person possible within the quickest, most appropriate window as possible. But then we're also a bit reliant on the other individual involved as to when they can start and really become a new employee for us.
That's great. Thanks, Mark.
Yep.
All right, Councilmember Napire. I don't think we can hear you still, but I do see your questions in the chat. Yeah, Mark, I don't know if you can see the chat. So she's asking, do all employees go through a goal setting and a review process? Do all employees go through a probationary period? What roles are considered for a classification and compensation study? And what were the deficiencies with the I-9 audit? So I don't know if you can see those.
Let's see if I can pull that up so I can hit each one of them. So all employees do go through an annual review process. We have, two guiding sets of rules. One is our collective bargaining agreement for unionized staff, and the other is our employee handbook. And they're currently on a different cadence. So if you're governed by the handbook as it relates to your probationary period, after 6 months, you do a probationary evaluation, and goal setting is part of that process. And then you kick into an annual review process. The probationary period currently in the collective bargaining agreement is a 12-month one. So at the end of that 12-month, you go through that same type of probationary evaluation process, which again includes the concept of goals for the upcoming year. And then you're on an annual cadence going forward, just like the people using the handbook. The second question, I think the probationary period one I covered. Our intent is to have a comprehensive classification and compensation study done from top to bottom, where we would ask that all of our job descriptions be looked at along with the structure of our pay structure to ensure that whatever adjustments may be recommended or made, we're doing it in a systematic way where we don't inadvertently affect one type of a group versus another. So this is meant to be a complete, comprehensive look for all positions.
All right.
And I think she may have just added, the I-9. It wasn't so much that there were deficiencies, it was that in some aspects we were due to do one. We also have a process where we're shifting a bit from what was traditionally a paper form process to doing it more electronically within the NeoGov structure. And so there are some retention requirements and some documentation requirements. And so it's more the process of needing to do one. And it's over the course of doing it that we would identify if there were truly any deficiencies or not. Hopefully that answered the question. The 12-month standard, it's currently the operating rules under the collective bargaining agreement. I think when that becomes available for discussions, it'll be interesting to see what we do with that. I tend to think the one in the handbook for 6 months is a sufficient look at how somebody is doing, but we'll have to work through that, particularly with the union. In terms of the city manager position, it stands out as a unique position. It obviously the council does the hiring process there. So I don't know that it as a position is typically within a classification and compensation because of the nature of how that position's compensation typically gets put together.
Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to follow up on that, you will all recall that the city council hires the city manager, and as part of the recruitment process, the recruiter did essentially a individual position class and comp study. So it will not be included in part of the staff, if you will, class and comp study that Mark is referring to.
Great, thank you. All right, Councilmember Howe.
I had just a general question. I know that you're fairly new to the department, and after reviewing your 15 slides, a lot of what you had there, training updates, updating the handbook and so forth seem table stakes. When you walked into the department, did you feel like they were behind or that you needed to play catch up? Or do you feel like the work that you've embarked on with the organization is something that you expected and you're just moving things along?
I think it's a little bit of a mix. I knew coming in that they lost some staff, and it was, again, a new group of people coming in. And, as a result of that, they've got a fresh set of eyes to take a look at as well. And I think also, there had been a large number of vacancies open, and so there was a lot of work being done on sort of that, just put your head down doing a lot of the basic HR work. And sometimes, particularly coming out of a situation like COVID, which was a non-traditional work environment, some of these other things that I've mentioned, tend to go by the wayside, much like if funding is scarce, people tend to nibble away at training funds in organizations. And so I think it's a little bit of both, not having been here and not knowing the people that left before I got here and how they conducted their business. I don't know. I know that it's my intent to make sure that we are up to speed on all the things that we should, and that we have a very well-functioning HR component to make sure that the departments in the city have what they need to get their work done. And, if that's 10 projects or 100, we'll work our way through them in the order of their most importance in order to provide that service and mitigate risk.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Great, thank you so much. I don't see any other hands. I really appreciate this presentation. It's a good catch up for things.
Great.
So
Thank you. Nice to be with you.
Thank you so much. All right, so next, I believe Mike is somewhere on Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor. Mike will be joining us shortly, and he's going to walk you all through the open positions that require appointment by our council, in essence, the mayor, as opposed to like going through Sound Cities or anything like that. And these reflect the current open positions that we need to fill. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mike.
Yes, thank you, Scott. And good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council. Mike Suggs, Senior Management Analyst for the City Manager's Office. As Scott mentioned, tonight's agenda item provides Council time to determine which members you would like to appoint to your external committees. Due to recent membership changes on the Council, there are several vacant seats on the committees that need to be reappointed. If Council would like, you can also choose to make additional membership changes beyond just replacing those vacancies. To help guide your discussion, I have a table that we can fill in with appointments as they're determined, and I'll go ahead and pull that up right now. One moment. Okay, that should be up on your screen. Highlighted cells are showing the seats that need to be filled. And can I just get a thumbs up to confirm that you can see the spreadsheet here? Perfect, thank you. And the alt designations, as you can see here, signifies that it's an alternate member seat. And that means the alternate member will attend in the absence of the primary member. Additional information about each of these committees, such as the meeting locations and times, is included in Exhibit 1 to tonight's agenda bill. If there are multiple council members interested in one of these vacancies, it may make sense to take a vote to determine the appointee. If there's only one member that's interested in a vacancy, I think we can just look for head nods to confirm, as this is not such a formal process. And with that said, I will go ahead and turn it back over to Mayor Clark for discussion on the council's preferences for these seats.
Great, thank you so much, Mike. I will say, just as an overarching, for the Eastside Fire Finance and Admin Committee, I would love to go back to being an alternate. Maybe we can figure that out after, but I would love to be slotted back in the alternate. All right, Council, so I will open it up. So anyone pretty much, I would like to see show of hands who's interested. I guess the first one would be the Eastside Fire and Rescue Board. And then I do also want to ask Councilmember Howe if you would like to continue to be in that alternate position or be on the board. That would be, I think, another consideration.
You know, I'm okay with being an alternate. So I'll just stress that you have to attend these meetings in person. Mm-hmm. And they are not short. they are long. So that's just the criteria. I mean, I would step up and do it if no one wanted that role, but I have a feeling there's a couple of people that are interested in it. And being the good gal that I am, I'm prepared to step back, let you all duke it out. So with that, let the games begin.
Okay. So I assume by hand raising, that means Councilmember Treen and Councilmember Stewart, you are both interested?
Correct.
Great. All right, do I have any other interest? Okay, so if I have this correct, we will vote on Councilmember Treen first, and if successful, we do not need to move on, and if not, then we vote on Councilmember Stewart.
You can do it that way, Mayor, or alternatively, you can ask for nominations and vote on that nomination, however you all would like to proceed. Ultimately, it's just a straight up mayoral appointment, so.
Cool.
There's no set way to do this.
I'm always looking for set. Does anyone have a preference to vote 1 and 2 or to take a nomination? Take a nomination. All right, so Councilmember House says take nomination. So I will entertain a motion or something.
I'd like to nominate Pam Stewart.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right, it's been first and seconded. Would you like to speak to that, Councilmember O'Farrell? Or does it need to be that formal? I'm not sure.
No, I think she did an excellent job.
Cool. Okay. All those in favor of Councilmember Stewart being appointed to Eastside Fire and Rescue Board, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
All right, so by a vote of 6-1, Councilmember Stewart is on our board of directors for Eastside Fire and Rescue. Are you interested in the FAC committee?
Are there numbers? Is there math?
There's way too many numbers.
I would be happy to, unless, again, can Councilmember Howe be
I don't
on
think
the
she
FAC if she's the
can. I think she has to be a
okay.
board.
Got it. Okay. Then I would be happy to take that on.
If that's okay with the rest of council, I would love to relinquish that to the numbers nerd.
I wear that on.
If that's
with
okay.
honor.
Awesome. And I don't see, okay, I just want to checking the chat as well. And there is a meeting Thursday. I just forwarded to you. I just got the agenda today. So just like an overarching. All right. Kokanee Working Group. Kent, would you like to stay as the alternate or would you like to move up?
Yeah, I'd move up.
Cool.
I've attended the meetings and talked to the people and started building the relationships prior, but also continuing since Christy.
Yeah, I totally support that. Yeah, so I nominate to move Kent up to being on the working group.
Second that.
All right. All those in favor of Kent being on the Kokanee working group, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, so then we need an alternate. Is there a volunteer? Councilmember.
I'd like to
Oh,
nominate Councilmember O'Farrell.
I will second that. And then I'm just making sure we got Ratuja on there.
Raising your hand.
Cool.
Okay, good.
Yeah, all those in favor of Councilmember O'Farrell as the Kokanee working group alternate, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. Thank you so much. And then I can't even say that. Salmon Recovery Council.
Raya 8.
Raya 8. So first we will go for the,
Councilmember Indipure has her.
oh yeah, Councilmember Indipure. Oh, you might have to type it. Sorry. I nominate Council Indipure. Awesome. Yeah, I would love to nominate Councilmember Indipure to be on the Salmon Recovery
Second.
Council.
Second.
All right. All those in favor of her being on, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, and then an alternate would be great.
I would like to nominate Councilmember O'Farrell again, if she is interested. Unless anyone else is also interested.
I would second. Our fish expert. Yeah.
Excellent.
All right. All those in favor of Councilmember O'Farrell being the alternate, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, 7-0. We have an alternate as well. And I hope that is it, Mike.
Yep, we filled all the vacancies.
Cool.
I just wanted to double check, are there any other changes that we want to make to the non-vacant seats while we have the opportunity?
If I just
Oh, yeah.
wanted to point out, though, that Councilmember O'Farrell is only an alternate. She is not a representative on any of the committee. So if there's a possibility to kind of move it around so she could be the representative on one. All right.
I think we're good.
Okay.
All right. Awesome. Cool. Thank you so much, Mike.
Fantastic. Thank you, Council.
Yes. And I didn't see any council reports. I don't know if you, Scott, if you have anything or if we have any other reports that I may have missed.
Just a couple of quick reminders for council. Reminder that next week we have a joint meeting with the Parks Commission that starts at 5:30. Just because I know like this week kind of snuck up on me and all of a sudden September's like halfway over. And then the week after we have a joint meeting starting off the meeting with the Planning Commission, which is also at 5:30. So I just want to get that on your collective radar that is happening. And otherwise, I think we are, I don't have anything else to follow up with council on at the moment.
Great. Thank you so much. Anything else? All right. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, I think we have Ratuja. Have a good day. I think you're in daytime.
Bye,
Thank you all.
Ratuja.
We are adjourned. Thank you.